On the 7th of January 2021, we all assumed that what we had seen was enough drama and turbulence to last the lifetime of this 8th Parliament. But it turns out they have much more in store for us. This past few days has seen the outright rejection and then approval of the 2022 budget, which has now become the document that has generated the most controversy in the House of men and women whom we describe as honorable. Issues about procedure bordering on quorum, voting, among others, brought about yet again chaos and near scuffles in the House of lawmakers of this country. But then again, what is a hung parliament without drama? Tonight on The Probe is the lawlessness in the lawmaking chamber, not by outsiders, by the honorable members themselves. Will this week see anything meaningful emerge from the House? These are key questions about the 2022 budget, which will guide our expenditure in the various sectors the coming year, begging for answers. Tonight, your probing questions have been duly received, and quite a pile of them around the country and around the world as well. We're live on the Joy News channel, Joy 99.7 FM. We're also on Joy Prime. DSTV is 421, GoTV 144, Love 99.5 FM in Kumasi in the Ashanti region, from where my guest for tonight, Joseph Osei-Owusu, First Deputy Speaker and Bekwai MP, is joining us from. We're also live on myjoyonline.com, streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and it's a good time to send your questions if you haven't done so already. Let's do a quick turnaround, then we zoom straight into probing. I am Emefa Apau. Please stay with me. You're welcome back to tonight's edition of The Probe. And my guest tonight, all the way from Bekwai, is the First Deputy Speaker of Parliament, and then also the Bekwai MP, Joseph Osei-Owusu, joining us live. We're grateful for your time here, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, if you can hear me, we'll zoom straight into action because I have a number of questions, loads and loads of them. I must say unprecedented on our show because a lot of questions coming from our audience. We'll get into it. But first, there's one that runs through all the pile that I have received, asking what you make of the view that this 8th Parliament is disappointing in its conduct, unruly behavior, unbecoming of honorable members.
Well, I'm a member of Parliament. The view of others in Parliament, I take that in good faith. I consider that a feedback on how we conduct ourselves. But I do not intend to pass judgment on what others see of us. I'm sure that my colleague members of Parliament and leadership of Parliament are also listening. And I hope that that will guide us in our future conduct.
From Parliament, the Public Affairs Directorate, is it an apology as a leader you share in?
Sorry, what apology? I didn't get the beginning of that.
I'm saying that we saw an apology letter from the Public Affairs Directorate of Parliament this week. At the end of it, is it an apology that you say as a leader you share in? Do you think that the people of Ghana deserve an apology from Parliament?
Yes, I think so. First, as from the institution of Parliament. But as a leader, I think it's not sufficient. I think the members of Parliament who were identified as misconducting themselves must be made to go through the disciplinary procedure in Parliament. I'm totally opposed to this system of a few individuals misconduct themselves and the entire Parliament of 275 of us and our officers take responsibility for the misconduct of a few individuals. So yes, Ghanaians deserve an apology, but it shouldn't end there. Disciplinary procedure should be applied.
From what we saw on Wednesday, for instance, many have said you contributed largely to it. You take that responsibility?
Well, if you gave me details of my contribution, I'll be glad to examine that.
We're going to get into the details.
I think that my conduct as a speaker,
you can finish that,
is above board.
Did you say your conduct as the speaker? Is that what you said?
Yes, yes. As a presiding officer, is above board.
So you are the speaker. Then why did you tell us that day or tell your colleagues that you are not?
I am not the speaker. I am the first deputy speaker. The first deputy speaker is different from the speaker.
But moments ago...
At no point do I seek to...
Moments ago,
I'm
saying, apologies to our listeners because we have a little delay there in that feed. But moments ago, I heard you say that as the speaker, you think that at least you take some responsibility for it. But then I think it's an opportunity for us all to understand what exactly you were trying to communicate that day by saying that you are not the speaker.
I thought I was clear. Maybe I need to take us through the constitutional arrangements that we practice. In our arrangements, there's a speaker who is not a member of parliament. The speaker is elected by members of parliament from outside parliament. Indeed, if a member of parliament is elected as the speaker, immediately he must resign. In the case of Honorable Dua Jaho, is the example I can give. He had been elected as a member of parliament and then also proposed as the speaker. Before he took the position as a speaker, he announced that he had submitted his resignation. And indeed, you recall that by-election was held in his constituency, and a new member was elected. That is not the case with deputy speakers. The Constitution, Article 96, says that deputy speakers will be elected from among members of parliament. So first, unless you're a member of parliament, you cannot be a deputy speaker. When we sit in the chair, though, all of us are referred to as Mr. Speaker. Mm-hmm. That is only practice. But in actual fact, my position is first deputy speaker, Honorable Esiama, member for MENA, is the second deputy speaker. At no point do we describe ourselves as speaker, or do we seek to exercise the powers of speaker. When I sit in the chair, I'm not replacing Mr. Speaker. I am the first deputy speaker entitled by the constitutional arrangement and the standing orders to sit and chair the House as the first deputy speaker. I preside over proceedings in that capacity. And maybe before you get there, let me make it clear. As long as I preside, I lose my vote. But I do not lose my membership. As soon as I cease to be a member of parliament, I do not qualify to be a deputy speaker. I think that distinction should be clear by now. That if you're not a member of parliament, you cannot be a deputy speaker.
Mm-hmm. So the issue about losing your vote...
Anytime I preside, I do not vote, but I am a member of parliament.
You do not vote, but do you form a quorum? Do you add to the numbers to form a quorum?
Yes, unless we are coming under Article 102. Mm-hmm. Parliament has two quorum requirements. Mm-hmm. When you're conducting ordinary business, for example, a minister is answering questions, or a member has raised, filed a statement, and it is being discussed on the floor. The quorum to do that kind of business, which does not require that the House takes any decision, is 1/3 of members minus the person presiding. So Article 102 is very clear. Apart from the person presiding. And note that it didn't say apart from Mr. Speaker, because it knows that apart from Mr. Speaker, the two deputy speakers may preside, and even a member of parliament may be elected from the House to preside. So anytime we come under Article 102, the person presiding is not counted. But when it comes to decision taking, mm-hmm. the words used by the Constitution are different. It says members, at least half of all members. It does not exclude the person presiding. Okay,
so the same article you're quoting, which is 104, talks about members being present and voting before he adds the half to it. My question then will be, can it be separated? Because that's what you sought to do on Wednesday. You mentioned that you were present, but you were not voting. The Constitution is clear, said present and voting, and not or. It doesn't use or. It says and voting. So then how do you say you are present, but you are not voting?
The members present and voting comes immediately after majority of. Mm-hmm. If you don't add the majority of, then you lose the sense of members present and voting. It is the majority of the members present and voting which are required to take a decision. It's not all the members present which are required to take the decision. If you eliminate the part relating to majority of, that is when you fall into the error you are falling into.
So you're saying that on Wednesday, you had the majority of members present, which included the Bekwai MP yourself.
Yes.
But you are separating the present and voting. That's the question I'm asking. That can it be separated? You are a lawyer too. Present and voting. You can say you are present, but you are not voting.
Yes. Indeed, you're not bound to vote if you're present. But for those who support or are against the question proposed, it should be either majority or minority of the members present.
Well, there are a lot of questions. I'm sure I'm just taking my take or my turn on them, because the issue about what happened on Wednesday too, which is the motions. Would you briefly with it, because I know questions are covering that as well. So from reading your standing orders, I know that motions are set to be moved, once moved and seconded. Set to be tabled, once moved and seconded. So can a speaker truncate it during that process and rule? I can't seem to find it in the standing orders. Maybe you can point me to it.
I don't know which part of the standing orders you're reading, but there are different circumstances under which a motion can be moved. There are formal motions which are filed and they are admitted by Mr. Speaker before they are published. And there are instances like what the minority leader sought to do. That some matter of importance had suddenly arisen, public importance. In that case, if you go through the process, you must have discussed that with Mr. Speaker before the same is brought on the floor of the House.
Is that what was done?
I don't know which of them you are referring to, but if you are referring to, yes.
So I'm referring to what the minority...
Referring to the one which the Honorable Minority... I pointed out to him that I'm not aware. He has surprised me. I sat in the chamber for 1.5 hours before coming, at the lobby for 1.5 hours before coming to the chamber. Nobody discussed that with me. But I was willing to listen so that if it was truly of such public importance, I would admit it. But after listening to all the sides, it's the same thing that I'd discussed the day before. So I refused it. My order was that the application is refused.
Okay, so that's why I'm asking that with this particular instance, from the education we know about motions once tabled, we know that it has to be moved and seconded like we've talked about. And I'm asking that can the Speaker truncate it in that process? And because I was asking, I can't seem to find it. Have there been instances in Parliament where a Speaker presiding has done that? If you can point us to it.
Has refused to admit an application to move a motion several times.
Because it was moved and seconded. That's why I'm asking.
It was not. I said I'll listen to them. After listening to them, I realized that there was nothing new. They were seeking to relitigate the matter which you are taking a decision on. So I refused the application for the motion.
Okay. Well, it's something you would do all over again once it presents itself again.
I hope so.
Well, let's get into the first batch of questions because there are lots of them. We'll get into it and then we hopefully get answers to everybody's questions tonight. So the very first one, Ellie Manning says, will Mr. Joseph Osei-Owusu accept that his conduct in the House the other time was a contributory factor to the near violence we saw? Can he state that he didn't act so partisan in the chair? Ellie Manning's question. We'll take another one. David Sapong says, I want some legal education from him since he's also a lawyer. Why did he count himself as part of the quorum needed to vote when the Constitution in Article 102 says anyone presiding cannot be part of the MPs needed to form a quorum? And does he agree that 104 on quorum for a vote flows from 102? David Sapong's question. We'll take another one. Emanuela Abuaje says, as first Deputy Speaker, could he have ruled that the substantive Speaker's decision was unconstitutional and take a vote to quash it, especially when he had claimed he's not the Speaker? So maybe we'll start from Emanuela's question. We'll take a response to that. Could you have ruled or set aside?
I think the first two have answered them already.
So I said we should take Emanuela's question.
They practically answered the same. All right. Emanuela's question is about a decision of Mr. Speaker. Let's get it clear. Mr. Speaker did not take a decision. Indeed, Mr. Speaker does not take a decision in the House. When I am presiding as a Deputy Speaker, I do not take decisions in the House. It's a decision of the House. And if the House's decision runs contrary to the Constitution, it does not matter who was presiding. The error is an error, and it ought to be so declared.
So Friday, Speaker Bagbin presided over an error, you say?
I wouldn't say he presided over an error. I'm saying that at the time they purported to put the question, he didn't have the required number of members present in the chamber. And for that reason, everything they did was a nullity.
Okay. Well, so Ellie, I know you say you've mentioned it or you've touched on it, but he wants to find out if you actually accept that your conduct in the House that day actually was a contributory factor to the near violence we saw. I know you touched on it, but directly to him.
I will tell him that misconduct cannot be predicated on disagreeing with somebody's ruling. And that's one of the weaknesses of our system in this country. Rather than taking responsibility for what we did wrong or did not do right, we seek to blame somebody. If I played any role which was improper, let the rules of the House be used to deal with me. It has not licensed you to go and also misconduct yourselves and then blame me for your misconduct. The people who misconducted themselves were entitled to voice out whatever on the floor of the House anytime. Members of the House had the opportunity to speak at length across broad. It didn't have anything to do with whether you agreed with my decision or not. There are procedures. If you disagree with my decision, there's approach. There are standing orders have provisions for how to deal with a situation you don't agree with.
Were you partisan that day?
I think that the person who is claiming that my conduct may have, what does he mean by my conduct? My ruling. Apart from my ruling, I'll be glad to know any other thing that I did which was which people find improper.
Were you overly partisan that day?
Apart from the ruling, I'll be glad to hear.
Were you overly partisan that day?
In what way was I partisan? As for how people rule, the persons claiming I was partisan are in fact being partisan in their evaluation of my role or my conduct of the House. But I can tell you, and I think I've demonstrated that over the years, that I am overly cautious and try as much as possible to be fair in managing the House anytime I preside.
For Wednesday, were you fair in presiding?
Yes, I was. What is your own view?
It is your view that we are asking. So once you've answered that, we'll move on and take some more questions.
My view is that I was fair.
Okay. Well, your colleagues and MPs are listening, so would know what your views are. But the next part of question, Amma Afari says, did he consult the substantive speaker on some of the decisions he has taken, or he is not at all required to do so, either in law or by convention? Amma Afari is asking. Jeffrey Orton says, given where we are currently and the time for Parliament to rise for the Christmas break, can the House work at all on the estimates? And even if they attempt, can they really do a good job? And then we'll take Daniel Mante's question. What will he say is the current state of the budget? If he says it's passed, then why is the House not moving forward with the estimates? That's the Daniel Mante's question. So I'll start from the top. The question about whether by convention or by law are you required in any way to consult the Speaker in terms of the decisions that you've taken acting in his stead?
Well, first thing is that I think people think that when a deputy speaker presides, he is presiding at the pleasure of the speaker. No, it's not, that is not the case. A deputy speaker presides in his own right, and he exercises the powers that a presiding officer is entitled to exercise in accordance with the Constitution and the standing orders. If an application is brought before me, I don't have to consult Mr. Speaker or the second deputy or any other person. Indeed, our practice has been to listen to the leadership of the sides. If I want to be addressed on the matter, I ask the minority leader first. After that, I'll listen to the majority leader, and then I'll make my ruling. The only decision the Speaker makes is when an application is brought before him to make a ruling. Every other one is a decision of the House.
Well, since this decision that the majority took, or the House took in passing the budget, have we heard from the Speaker at all? I'm sure you are in touch with him, even though he's outside. Has he communicated anything of the sort to you? Have we heard from him?
No. We had, the last time I spoke with him was the day before we sat on Tuesday, that's the Monday night. That's the last time we spoke.
Okay. Well, we'll take the other questions also so we can get responses. The substantive issue, the budget, we say, has been passed. But it appears that we are yet to work on estimates. We're hoping Wednesday, Thursday, that would have happened. We are preparing for the Christmas break. Maybe I'll merge the last two questions, then we talk about it. Where exactly are we in moving forward? Do we know when exactly these estimates will be worked on? I know there are still negotiations, talks in the back. What's the status of it?
Well, the business of the House is managed by the House. There's a committee called the Business Committee. They propose the business of the House for any week. I'm aware that they met, I think, Wednesday, and the business statement also would have been read last Friday. I'm not sure if that was done because I wasn't in the chamber. But certainly, the business of the House, as proposed by the Business Committee, is ongoing. Last Tuesday, the business that was to be conducted on the floor of the House was largely questions to be answered by the ministers and a statement by the Minister for Agriculture on Farmers' Day. Unfortunately, we couldn't do the statement, we couldn't take the questions. The same thing was for Thursday. So the business relating to the budget at this point is at the committee level. I know that some committees were sitting when the leadership advised that they should hold on while some discussions are ongoing. But I'm sure that they will resume once the discussions are brought to a close.
What discussions are ongoing on it?
As I said, some discussions, I'm not privy to them, but I know they relate to the budget. Some of the requests made by the minority, which the finance minister spoke to as his closing remarks. So they want those things confirmed up and placed on the table. Those are the things that I'm aware that they are discussing.
Well, you'll be presiding together with the second deputy speaker as and when. Do you see, we know that the speaker will be back on the 14th of December, but do you see that estimates would be approved before the Christmas break?
I believe so. Parliament's job is either a reject or approved. If the Parliament decides that any part of it is not approved, it will go back to the Finance Ministry to resubmit, review, and resubmit. So whatever it is, we will come to a conclusion one way or the other.
Well, but there are those who are of the view that before this particular budget presentation, the executive should have consulted Parliament a bit more before that policy proposal presentation was actually done. You share in that view?
Well, I've been a member of Parliament for 12 years. I'm aware that usually there are pre-budget meetings. They happen at committee level, they happen at sector levels. So I can't confirm because in my current position, I don't participate in the sector committee meetings. I can't confirm whether those meetings happened or not. But it is not out of place at all to suggest that any such thing will be discussed. But I'm aware that sometimes, indeed, some members from the other side are actually giving foreknowledge and they discuss and they submit their proposals or their views. I'm not saying it happened this time, but I know that some practice like that had been happening previously.
Do you think that it could have cured what we are seeing now in terms of all the challenges and the back and forth on this particular budget if we had consulted wider and broadly?
I don't know. This is asking me to offer a view after the fact. I don't know what would have happened. I think that some of the people who look at the numbers critically from both sides of the House have very clearly stated the position, even at meetings I sat in, that their views is not about which side of the political divide they belong. It is about keeping our country going. And they gave us strong warnings about playing with the numbers and the policies that is before the House.
Well, since we're talking about the budget substantive issue, what we saw on Wednesday, I saw that what the majority came with was the motion on Order 50 in the standing orders. The concern is that why did they not come with a substantive motion for rescission and rather came with Order 50, which is supposed to be urgent public interest outside the House, when this issue about budget was already before the House? Did you have to accept that on Order 50 rather than asking them to move a motion for rescission?
You see, I've declined from discussing the decision and its implications. But I think that once we took a decision that it was a nullity, you can't rescind what is a nullity. In law, when you say it's a nullity, it means that it did not happen. So a motion of rescission is a different one. Indeed, I must confess that we have had this discussion between the minority and majority for long hours the day we finally decided to declare it null and void. That has been their positions. Some of them have viewed that you should bring a motion of rescission. Some suggested that you bring the concerns you agree can be done, add them and represent them, But in the end, we concluded, not the meeting, that once we did not get the appropriate numbers, the decision was a nullity. And therefore, we cannot indeed seem to rescind the decision that is a nullity.
Okay, so that's why you accepted it on Order 50. Well, we'll get into the other questions also.
No, that 50 part was an application brought to me, discussed at the pre-sitting meeting.
Okay, so it was written. Was it a written? Was it written?
No, it was not written.
So you were saying that it was pre-discussed.
Unfortunately, the minority did not appear at the pre-sitting meeting. We left the discussions around 2 p.m. and we agreed that we will sit at 3:30. So by 3:15, I had gone into the lobby. That is our practice, that we discuss any other outstanding matters. But unfortunately, they did not turn up. And that was where the request to make this application was made and was discussed with the clerks, and we agreed that it can be done. And so we did it.
Okay, so after Wednesday, we've seen a 20-member committee formed with members from both sides to take a look at the seeming impasse and the misunderstanding between both sides. For instance, do you see a feasible solution to what we are seeing in Parliament? Because the sights and the scenes, of course, are not palatable at all. Do you foresee that we'll actually see a solution to this?
First, I understand that the meeting was really to discuss what people have been described as unruly and a misconduct of some members on the floor of the House. for which the Public Affairs Director has apologized. So I am not yet briefed about the full discussion so far and what conclusions they have drawn. But I'm confident that we can reach some conclusions.
But the key question for some
truly, it's about finding a way to move forward from where we are now so that we can come to some conclusion on the budget.
Well, as members...
So I'm sure that they finally will get some headway and enable Parliament to proceed with the business of the House.
Okay. Are members playing us as a people?
I don't understand that. Playing at the people or playing out?
Playing us as a people. When they say, members, you are colluding to just play us as a people, and everything we see out there is just a charade, is just staged. Are you playing us as a people?
I can't understand why anybody will come to that conclusion. Look
Why
at
not?
the emotions that have arisen. Look at the threat I've made to. I mean, yesterday I heard the deputy leader saying that he feels threatened, he feels unsafe in the House. Why will we play such a game? Not at all. It is, my experience and my understanding of politics or democracy is one of alternative government. You have the power today. You have a proposal. I am sitting outside. I say that what you're proposing, I don't agree with it. If I have the power, I'll do it differently and I'll do it better. If I can persuade you who are in power to adopt part of my policy, the better for me. Otherwise, if you don't agree with me, you go ahead and implement your policy while I tell the populace that I can perform better. Given the same circumstances, I would have implemented A and C and not B. And therefore, if people listen to you, then they will punish the one who is implementing the policy during the elections and give me the power so I come and demonstrate what I said I can do. I am disappointed when that gets into emotional fisticuffs and violence, because we defeat the entire purpose of alternative government. The real punishment for policies which are not to the benefit of the people usually happen at the polls. So I hope, and I made that point to the minority, that you have made all your points. The ministry has agreed that we will do A, B, C, D, E. We have strong disappointments on D. The argument should not be that unless you agree with D, you cannot implement your program. No, it should be that, well, if you're going to implement this, I will tell the public that if I had the power, I'll do it differently and I'll do it better. Sometimes I think the people confuse that and maintain that unless you take my way or you do it my way, then I will not let you do it. That is where our democracy gets confusing. And sometimes the populace don't understand us. But otherwise, having different views of the same matter is the whole essence of having alternative parties.
Okay. On the
and that's
dramatic...
what the approach should be.
Okay. So on the dramatic twists and turns on Wednesday, we noticed that you were not in the chamber on Thursday. And hearing the Deputy Majority Leader mention yesterday on Newsfile that he fears for his life, and of course, he fears when he comes into the chamber, for instance. Do you feel same? Was it the reason why you didn't show up on Thursday? We saw the chair being moved amongst others, and you had to be whisked away quickly out of the chamber. Were you afraid? That's why you didn't show up on
Please
Thursday?
don't add, I was not whisked away. The media people contribute to the needless tension with your choice of words.
So what happened?
I was not whisked away.
What happened?
I suspended sitting and I walked away. Everything else I've seen was after I had left the chamber. None of them happened in my presence. What happened in my presence, I sought to take action. But then I was advised by the class at table that I should let things lie. So I listened to the advice. Of course, that's their role, to advise us, guide us, But don't, as my sister from Takoradi called, that he said that my seat was pulled from under me. And that, am I okay? Was I injured? I said, oh, at that time I hadn't even seen the video of somebody taking the chair. So I said, no such thing happened. It was subsequent to that that I saw the video. But the misreportage is also adding to the tensions that appears to be in the Azengo of the country. So you please report it as you see it. Cut down on your additives, please.
Well, the media is always the easy targets in these matters. At least everybody saw what happened on TV that day. But I'm asking the substantive question about...
Exactly, nobody whisked me away. That is your addition.
Okay. I saw the security men take you out of the place. But I would want to find out, was that part of the reason why you didn't show up on Thursday?
That is the part I disagree with you with.
Okay.
There was no security man around me who took me away. Okay. I walked myself straight to the lobby.
Okay. Well, if that's your description. But I'm finding out, was that part of the reason why you didn't show up on Thursday? Were you afraid?
No. On Thursday, I called a meeting of the leaders to discuss what I'd seen in videos after I had left the chamber. So when the leadership came, that was when they informed me that indeed a committee had been set up by the two sides. So it is because I wanted to understand what happened after I left the chamber. And after we had the discussion, we agreed that we will not do any serious business for that morning. There was no point for me to go and sit. So I asked the second deputy to go and do as we have agreed.
Are tensions still high in Parliament? Or it's better?
I don't know. On the floor, some people have behaved what I will call unruly. I'll call unparliamentary. But when it comes to tensions, I don't see that. When we leave there, we'll discuss those things. When I was leaving the chamber on Wednesday, I was working with some of the minority people, and we were discussing our respective views. There was no tension between us.
Okay. It takes me to the question that Perpetual is asking. It says, would you continue to mount the chair in the absence of the Speaker, knowing you could be attacked by the NDC? Perpetual Jemfi is asking. Maybe you could give a brief response. We'll get to Julian's question shortly.
I must say that I don't believe that I'll be attacked. I am sure that I'm safe in the house. I'm sure that even those who have been seen on videos doing things which I will call unparliamentary have themselves regretted what they did. I'm not sure anybody wants to be cited again. But I have no reason to fear my colleague members of Parliament.
Okay. Well, there's one also from Julian. Since the disturbances, has he reached out to the NDC caucus to settle the misunderstanding? Julian Abebio is asking. We will add one final one more question to it, then we can box it all together. We have another one. Okay, Solomon Mensah says, as a party, okay, so I don't get that. I think we'll have to rectify it. But maybe you could take Julian's question on that, then we can get a response to that.
All right, so we have been meeting. The day after my ruling on Wednesday, on the Thursday, as I've just said, I called the leaders of both sides of the House and the directors of Parliament, and we met to discuss what some of the things that had happened after I had left the chamber. And that's when I said I learned that actually the whips on both sides have formed committees, including some of the people who were seen in the video doing things which are called unparliamentary. And they have reached consensus that those things will not be repeated.
Okay. Well, we'll get back into the House, but there's one on the e-levy. There's a question on the e-levy. Jimmy Opare says, as a parliament, have they not heard the cries of the people on some of the things in the budget, particularly the e-levy and the 15% increase in fees charges, and on top of that, subject to an annual increase pegged at inflation? Why have they turned this into a political football game? Jimmy Opare is asking, especially on the e-levy.
Well, on taxes, we will always have different perceptions, different views. So how he sees it, I don't begrudge him. But in one of our meetings, the Minister of State at the presidency gave the numbers, how much revenue we generate, how we spend them, and what is left for any other thing. How, if we are not able to do what we ought to do, how it will affect the economy. Mm-hmm. What we must know, that we have spent over the years money we haven't earned, and it is coming now, clutching at us. Either we raise more revenue, or we cut heavily expenditure, or our economy collapses. Is one of the three. How he interprets that, it's up to him, or is it her? You know, and how I look at it is also the reason that is informing my decisions.
Since you've been to Bekwai, haven't you had your constituents raise issues?
Not at all. On the Young Men's platform, I said what I'm saying now. I shared a video of Jackson. Jackson was my contemporary at Legon. His discussion of the budget in raw terms. I put it out on the Young Men's platform. And after some discussion, I joined in and explained that, listen, if you look at Bekwai, in the last 4 years, you have a new hospital. The last expenditure I recall was the equipment of the hospital. That alone cost us 12 million euro. We borrowed. There are 6 secondary schools in the municipality, or senior high schools. 4 of them had new dormitories, new classrooms, some had teachers' bungalows, and so on. We borrowed. We have about 30 kilometers of town roads tarred, plus 10 kilometers of asphalt laid on some of the old roads. We have many of our link roads tarred. We have borrowed because the contractors have not been paid for that. We either raise more money to pay them, or you stop any other development and use whatever revenue we get to pay off the debts. Then there will be no opportunity for some of the young people to even join public service. Whether we like it or not, we have to take a decision one way or the other. It is what we want that we must pay for.
Okay. Well,
So
in the meetings that you've had we know that the minority and the majority, apart from the 20-member committee, we know that the leadership, you've also been engaging on this particular budget. The minority had openly said, at least yesterday we saw, on Friday, the minority whip, or issued a statement, the chief whip, Mutaka Mubarak, issued a statement after we heard the minority leader at a program also mention that they've negotiated and they are hoping to get a 1% after understanding everything and the education on it from the finance minister and Charles Edubuahin. He's convinced that 1% is the way to go. But the minority as a whole also says that no decision has been reached. It's 0% or nothing at all. At the meetings, at least at that level, you know what exactly has been agreed on. What exactly has been agreed on at that level, you'd say?
As I said, the meeting I sat in for about 4 hours, we got gridlocked on the e-levy.
Okay.
The proposal that was put on the table by the minority was not acceptable to the majority. The counter proposal that were put on the table by the majority was also not acceptable to the minority. So that's where we locked up. I'm aware there are further discussions are going on, but as of now, I don't know that any conclusion have been reached yet. Okay. I'm sure they will continue to talk, looking at the position where Ghana stands generally.
Okay.
But I want to place on record that the economists on both sides both agreed that unless we do something drastic, our economy will collapse.
Well, so I'll take you to Wednesday. I have some questions, but unfortunately we can't go through all. We're really out of time at this point. But on Wednesday, we saw a woman in the chamber, now a subject of controversy, that we are told by the minority and at least some public reactions that that was not Madame Adwoa Safo in Parliament. You presided that day. I don't know what exactly you've been told. At least the next day, she was in Parliament, spoke up and stated that she was indeed in Parliament that day. But previous day, unfortunately, that person or that woman did not speak. You presided. What's the briefing that you're getting? Was it Adwoa Safo or not?
At that day, apart from the leaders who spoke, nobody spoke. And so let it not appear as if there was a general debate and she refused or failed to show up or participate in it. No. On Monday, we had a meeting at the Jubilee House. Whilst we were waiting to meet, Honorable Adwoa Safo entered. He exchanged greetings with us and went on to meet with some other people. On Tuesday, before we came to the chamber, both sides were having caucus meetings. Honorable Adwoa Safo was at the majority caucus meeting. We met twice. We first met with the leaders, we broke the meeting, came back to address our members each side, went back to the meeting and came back to announce that we couldn't reach a consensus, so we are going to the chamber. And each one of them, I personally saw Honorable Adwoa Safo. So I don't know where people are coming from with, it is not her. It's not. Indeed, you notice that when she entered on Wednesday, she was not wearing a face mask. It was the majority leader who advised her, look, take your mask off. So there will be no more controversy about whether it is you or it is not. But I will confirm that I saw her the Monday, I saw her the Tuesday before we came to the chamber.
And the Wednesday that you presided, you saw her as well? That day, did you see her?
Well, you saw her. That was the day she spoke on the floor.
So the previous day also, you saw her personally?
I saw her personally at the caucus meetings before she came to the chamber.
Okay. So the person we saw in the chamber, you can confirm that it was indeed Adwoa Safo?
I'm not sure. You see, photos and things can be manipulated. So I cannot speak to the photo that their people are discussing. What I can say is I saw Adwoa Safo on Monday and Tuesday personally.
Okay. Well, that's where we're about to draw the curtains for today's edition of The Probe. I'm sure that discussions will continue. But for the minority, at least listening, because we know that Tuesday we're reconvening. I don't know if you are presiding that day, because you've said that a lot of talk in the background. If you had to speak directly to your colleagues in Parliament, what would it be?
It will be that let them tell Ghanaians their alternative and leave Ghanaians to punish the majority if they implement what Ghanaians don't like.
They should not speak for the ordinary people as they say they are doing. What they say they are doing is in defense of what the ordinary person wants. Should they wait for you to inflict
for them
on the ordinary
on the floor
Ghanaian?
Of the House. Mm-hmm. Yes. If the majority says, well, we have heard you, thank you, but we intend to proceed, well, let them take responsibility for what they do. I don't insist that unless you do it my way, then you can't govern, you can't pass the bill. That's where I part ways with them. But as for speaking their mind, offering alternatives, telling Ghanaians that we would have done it A or B or C, they're entitled and they actually ought to do it.
Okay. Is the minority giving you a tough time as a majority?
Let me say that since I've been a member of Parliament, we have always been cooperative. Now I know we are cooperating quite well. If you recall, the other time when you interviewed me on this program, I said, what I see is that it does appear that the party outside Parliament rather is taking hold and trying to direct how Parliament's behavior should be. That, in my view, is where we're getting it wrong. I think members of Parliament should stand firm and assert themselves. Whatever decision we come to, they will be held responsible.
Mr. Joseph Osei-Owusu, we'll leave you here. We're grateful for your time. So that's a first Deputy Speaker of Parliament and the Bekwai MP, Joseph Osei-Owusu there on tonight's edition of The Probe. A Walk with Jesus is up next for our radio audience. I am Emefa Pau. There's more news when you log on to myjoyonline.com. On behalf of the entire crew, we say many thanks for your company. Have a good evening.